This is Sarah Barnes from the Wilson Center's Maternal Health Initiative, and today I have the honor of speaking with Kira Rudik, member of Ukrainian Parliament, leader of the Holos Party, and vice president of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe. Parliamentarian Rudik and I spoke last year on the one-month anniversary of the war in Ukraine, and I wanted to connect again as we near the one-year anniversary of this war. Thank you, Kira, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'll get right to it. Can you kick things off by providing us with an update of the situation in Kyiv and the people of Kyiv as we near the one-year anniversary of the war in Ukraine on February 24th?
Well, first of all, I can tell you that myself and people of Kyiv, we are very grateful for the ability to be here. I think when we were speaking to you with you last time, none of us could predict what would happen, and we were not planning to as far as right now, and we are very happy that we are alive and able to exist. Since last time we spoke, there has been many events, but there is one thing that still remains the same. It's air raid sirens that are going on and on almost every day, and a necessity to go and hide and be afraid for your life that did not significantly improve. Since that year, we have more than 50% of the energy infrastructure destroyed. And right now I'm speaking to you running on a diesel generator. So to get running water, electricity, and heat all together for a home in Kyiv is kind of a blackjack and something that you don't actually get. We still live with the curfew. When everything stops like around 9, the curfew starts at 11, but you need everybody to get home, and up till 5 a.m. We still have a block posts around the city, and people are getting nervous when they hear loud sounds. The traffic lights sometimes are not working, and the lights are off in the night times due to the energy outages, and this is why it's you have to be very cautious when driving during the night time. On the other hand, we knew that this winter will be the toughest winter for us since the Second World War, and it was indeed. And again, it's still like a half miracle, half hard work that we are able to go through it. You know, it's beginning of February. We still have like at least 2 cold months, but it's already clear that we will probably go through this winter and survive. We have the shelters around the city, which are called the unbreakability points, where people can charge their phones and just get some warm cup of coffee and some internet. And I can tell you on a personal note, my morning starts, I wake up, I open my eyes, I look around, see if the lights are on, and then I check if my phone was charged, and it is usually like a great thing if it was charged. Then you check if you have running water, and then you plan your day accordingly. There are when the diesel generator is off, you turn on all the lights, and then you're waiting. So sometimes the electricity is turning on 3 a.m., 4 a.m. along with the water. And this is when you have to go quickly and do everything around the house, no matter if it's like 4 a.m., because you need to start the washing machine, the dryer, to clean up around the house as quickly as possible. And of course, it takes you just like a toll on a basic matter of things around the house. But you know, on this weekend I went to the south of our country. I've been to Kherson and Mykolaiv. Kherson was recently deoccupied in autumn, and I can tell you there are so much pain and struggle, much more than we are experiencing here. So Whatever I'm telling you, and it sounds like something that is hard, and it is hard, is nothing comparing to what people are going through at the territories that were under the occupation.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that. Could you speak a little bit, you've kind of alluded to it and we spoke at length last year. Can you speak a little bit to the current situation for Ukrainian refugees and those who are internally displaced at this time?
Oh, it's super hurtful topic for me as a person who really wants to build our country to the best of its capabilities. So there has been the major migration, probably the worst, like the biggest migration since Second World War in Europe. So the calculations are very different, but it seems like about 7 million of people have moved out of the country. Some of them returned, some of them moved back again. And in total, 10 million people were misplaced from their homes. So it is incredibly hard because find the new homes to start new lives at different ages with different capacities. And I think each and every of us can imagine like having all the social connections, all the more or less stabilized homes for yourself and your family, and especially kids. And then you have to start over in the places that where people are supporting you, but it's still up to you to go through all those challenges. I can give you an example. I have recently been to Warsaw. In Warsaw, they are building 80 schools for Ukrainian children, which is fantastic. But then I'm thinking, like, what will happen to Ukrainian children? When are they going to return? And are they going to return at all? And because we are losing this, you know, the core of the nation, women with children, the ones that we wanted to protect the most, when we said, if you feel like you need to run for your life, please run. We'll do everything to support you. Same thing is happening inside Ukraine. So unfortunately, year from the beginning of full-scale invasion, we are still unable to say, oh, it is safe here, here, and here. You see that Russia has improved their attacking capabilities. For example, the Iranian drones that are being attacking us, and they are attacking us in different places. And this is why the return to school projects that the government had did not really work well, because only those schools are able to continue working that have bomb shelters. And it's like such a small percentage. We were raising funds to equip schools with the bomb shelters, but also let's make it, like, let's be very, very honest. It's incredibly hard to study when you have to go down to the basement like every other hour and be concentrated, and for the teacher to be able, you know, normally speak without their voices trembling because they don't know what's going to happen. So on a geopolitical scale, we will start being able to have like some normality for everyone is when we will be able to close our skies to make sure that the chance of any Russian missile or drone reaching out the civilian population is like very low. Right now, it is not low. And right now, the Western allies are still in the process of getting us those defense systems, etc. So the main goal for us, for the displaced persons inside the country, was to make sure that they go through the winter. In November, the like total agreement was like the amount of people that get into the winter needs to be the same that like exits the winter. And this was our goal, was like sharing the warm clothes, taking care of more people than before, and it was everybody's responsibility. And I think right now we are pretty successful in that, both in supporting our military in the trenches, but also in making sure that women and children that had to leave their homes were cared for. There is, for the misplaced people in Europe, there is another issue, which is most of the programs, they were like 6 months up to 8 months, 9 months long, right? So people like, so they say, okay, you move. This is the kick that gives you like a first boost to figure out where you live, find a job, take care of your kids. But there were so many people that made the decision in autumn and decided to move, and they were already not able to take this benefit of those programs. We are working right now on improvement and prolonging them. At some point, people have to move on with their lives. And this is why it's important for us to continue the international work and keep Ukraine on the agenda.
Yes, very, very much. So to what extent have Ukrainians started who fled in the beginning of the war? Have people really started trying to come back? And is it something you mentioned, but is it something that Ukraine is trying to encourage people to come back? Is it part of the reconstruction plan? Can you speak a little bit more on that?
So, we always need to remember that moving and returning back is like 90% related to the school year. So what we have seen in last August, that many people, many women with children returned back home because for the school year to start, so children have to have some normal life. Like an important note here would be that we right now have a generation of kids, like a 4th grade kids, that have never been to actual school. Can you imagine that? So because they have been through COVID first 2 years, and now then half of the year they were interrupted, and now they have not gone to the real school. It's just like something that makes me absolutely upset. So, but the issue were in September, there was an amount like up to 2 million people who returned. But then in October, there has been another huge strike on Kyiv, Lviv, and other cities, which made so many families to say, no, we just cannot go through that, and move back to Poland, Czech, Slovakia, etc. And unfortunately, what we see from them, polls that we have in those countries, those second decisions were like final, because once you start your new life in you abroad, then you grab everybody and say, okay, like it's time to return. You come back, and then you sit again in a bomb shelter. You say, yeah, never again. And so in the end of autumn, Ukrainian government was not urging people to come back, because with the 50% of our infrastructure destroyed, we did not know if we will be able to sustain with the amount of people. So right now, we are bringing, like everything that we are doing basically is bringing more and more generators to Ukraine to support critical infrastructure. Why is it important? Because for the hospitals, for the critical infrastructures and military bases, we have to have the energy uninterrupted, but we did not have the capacities for that. And the question was like, do you really want your kids to go through these challenges of, like warming up the water and like not being able to have like lights for 5 days? And again, I can tell you, there is a huge difference between sitting in a bomb shelter with lights on, internet on, everybody's playing on their phones and like pretending it's a game, and when it is dark, no internet and no electricity and no heat. It's just like an absolutely different story on so many levels. And when the spring comes, it will depend on really on the military situation, if we will be urging for the people to come back. It is incredibly unfortunate for the country, because again, we are losing like this best core soil that the future is going to grow on. However, I'm working with those women in Poland, and I know what they feel and what they think, and I understand there is a huge difference between political perspective and humane perspective. And on a humane level, you say, you as a mother have only one obligation. You have obligation to your children to make sure that they are safe, they have like all the levels of comfort that you can provide to them, and that they're getting the proper education. So please do that, and then we'll figure out the rest.
Yeah, that hits home for me. I can imagine that is quite difficult. And I think if we could just stay for a minute to talk a little bit more about the situation for women. When we spoke about a year ago, women were, still remaining in Ukraine for the most part. Some had left, but there were still quite a few women there. Women were quite engaged, and so I'm interested in what women are doing now. A year ago, we talked about women being soldiers or organizers, health workers, women in leadership like yourself, women helping with cyber warfare, things like that. Currently, are women deployed in the Ukrainian army? And can you speak a little bit about the roles that women have taken up?
So everything that you mentioned and that I mentioned a year ago, it still remains the same. So women are deployed in all areas, maybe even more, because what we learned is on a political level, in the local councils, we mostly have only women left because the men went to the front. As for the army, it's before the war we had I have it written here, 37,000 women in Ukrainian army, and 7,000 have joined since the full-scale invasion. So it's a tremendous amount. So it's right now up to 20-25% of total Ukrainian army are women. And so women are working on the local council level, basically being this, a net of people who are having all the local governance issues on their shoulders. Women continue working on cyber warfare, humanitarian support and aid. It's basically they have improved significantly since the very beginning of this full-scale invasion. We are working on the international front, and even if they left, they're still working to get more help and aid. The preparation for the winter was a national project that we were all pitching in, because once you were saying this, it's cold somewhere, the answer was there is a place where it's even colder, and it's in trenches. And if you can imagine standing somewhere in the snow, the first thing you're thinking about your relative or the loved one, or somebody whom who is at the front right now, who cannot get into a warm car, who cannot get into back home to the heat, and you just okay, let's buy them everything that they need. And this humanitarian support has been incredibly significant. I think, again, with the support of our army for the winter, we did a very decent job, and it allows us not to hear the stories of somebody frozen to death, etc., in the trenches. Women are working really hard as breadwinners for their families. So though the pay for men in the army is significant, probably first couple of pays that is getting in there is being used to buy all the necessary equipment for the forces, etc. And this is why there are so many women that had to step up and figure out how to provide for themselves, especially if they had to leave. So basically, we have right now a nation of entrepreneurs versus volunteers versus home teachers. So it's another level of responsibility and creativity. Women have to deal with challenges that they have never dealt before, starting with dealing with the technology, when you have to provide for your children to get them electricity and then the heat, and then that's figure out how to get the internet, wire it all together to some charger. So it's it has been a challenge, but I think that what we are seeing right now is we got stronger, and it's not something it's not a political statement. It's the real thing that we see outside. There has been a recent attack on Kiev with kamikaze drones probably a couple of weeks ago. And we have seen how the people reacted, because it happened near here in near the area where I live, and people were so different than a year ago. there was no panic, there was no screams and yells, and everybody was very concentrated on how to get the help to who needs the help, and how to figure out how we, how we are working as organized as possible. And it was incredible to watch that and be a part of that. And I think moving forward, it will make us more and more resilient.
Resilient. That's exactly what I was just thinking when you was talking about strength and resilience like that. It sounds very devastating listening to your personal accounts, and it also sounds like you're absolutely right that the community has come together and become quite resilient at this time. A final thing that I wanted to talk about was, in addition to the human toll, the news is consistently showing us the devastating loss of Ukraine's historical sites. As of last week, UNESCO verified damage to 238 sites since the start of the war. 105 religious sites, 18 museums, 85 buildings of history and or art, 19 monuments, and 11 libraries. Can you speak a little bit to what you feel Ukraine has lost and what Ukraine is working to try to preserve as far as your heritage?
First of all, when you're talking about that destruction, I imagine things that I have seen during the first months of the war, when the directors of the village museums were fleeing, having like all the items packed into their cars or somebody's trucks, like throwing away their own personal belongings and trying to preserve some old books and pictures and some historical items that they knew meant a lot for the nation, and how they were really doing that under the bombarding, saying, well, this is something bigger than me. And I think we don't know all the stories of heroism of the people who were doing such a fantastic job. However, there is something that you cannot preserve. Like when there is a bombarding, we already learned how to protect our monuments. And you probably have seen the pictures of monuments that were surrounded by the bags of sand. And we knew that Russians targeted a couple of monuments just like for the sake of destroying the morale and the symbol. And it's not the first time my country is losing the history. For example, when Crimea was annexed, they removed so much of the historic of the matters of the historic value, and they destroyed the Museum of Khersones, and they tried to rewrite the history. And the only thing that we can hope for, that was the international tribunal that we are hoping for Putin and everybody who was responsible for the war, that it will include returning of things that they have taken from the occupied territories. But there is something else. No matter how hard it hurts, that some of the things are lost without being able to restore, because there are some cities that are taken to the rubbles. Our nation is getting something bigger, paying this price. We are getting the national idea, and we are getting this strong connection with our ancestors who are basically fighting the same fight. So right now it's getting us so close to our ancestors that we didn't even imagine it would be. So on the weekend when I've been visiting Kherson and Mykolaiv, I was speaking to our military in Kherson, and so they were showing me small packages that plastons. So it's like a Boy Scouts organization in the Western Ukraine, and now it's in all Ukraine. So they made and the letter, and so they were saying, our dear soldiers, we looked up in the historic books on like what were the brave fighters for Ukrainian sovereignty in 1939, what they were eating, and we recreated this recipe for you. And so please go ahead and win, and we are with you, and like we love you, etc. Like good luck and Slava Ukraini. And so that was like it was very cute because so this bread, no, not the bread, it was like basically like a protein bar something. So it has some prunes and nuts and seeds, and it was all mixed together, and it was like really wrapped nicely. But you can imagine how they already feel this connection, that this fight is longer than we are. I think everything that's being lost right now is comparable to those kids that had to go somewhere and read through the books what were the brave partisans of 1939 were eating and how they had to recreate it, then pack it with the small bags and send it over to Kherson.
Yeah, no, that's a really good anecdote. And the young generations will find ways to learn about history, even if there aren't all the buildings there that were there before. People will find a way to keep the history alive. That is all of my questions, but did you have any final statement or comment that you would like to make before we close?
Yeah, this is my favorite one. Last time we spoke with you, we did not know what's going to happen. We only had like one fuel that we are still running on, and this fuel is hope. And we learned that this fuel is really, really powerful because it's being fueled by our allies and by different beliefs and by super impossible things that were not supposed to happen. When we last spoke with you, we were still begging for closing the sky, and we had so many aspirations. But at that moment, nobody believed that we were getting the heavy weapons that we really needed. Nobody believed that we were getting the candidacy to European Union. Nobody believed that we are capable of counteroffense, and of course, nobody believed that we are taking Kherson back. At that moment, nobody believed that we are going to survive through all these terrifying attacks, and that we are going to kick off Russia from the United Nations, that we are going to get Russian money confiscated and used for the sake of Ukraine for the rebuild. Nobody believed that the destructions of Bucha and Irpin are repairable. And it is all happening one by one, because we learned that things, that impossible things can happen once you really want them and you push really hard. And especially when the right things. So it did not matter that nobody believed in that, because we believed that we will do that. So right now, same as almost a year ago, we do believe that we will win this war and rebuild our country. And we are going to run on this fuel for as long as it is necessary.
Wonderful. And I would say a year in now, people do believe in the resilience and strength of the people in Ukraine. Thank you so much, Kira, for joining us again.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and glory to Ukraine.